What's going on, y'all? Just Haley here, and I am back again with another build video for you today. Now, today's video is going to be, as you can already see on screen, my take on the Immortal Trinity. Now, Trinity had a really fun rework that just kind of gave her a little bit of quality of life. Nothing too fancy, nothing too crazy, but it is really cool. Now, the really cool thing about Trinity is that she didn't get too much different. She wasn't like Nova, where she got some crazy update that honestly changed the way you play her. She's pretty much the same Trinity that she's always been. It's just there's a little bit more quality of life going on now, and I think that's really cool. The other thing with Trinity is that honestly it wasn't a build that I was going to show you guys because overall I thought it was kind of well covered by a lot of other people, but then I realized a lot of those builds are these niche builds for her one, allowing her to do some kind of funky stuff with that, but they're so kind of, I don't know, they're just not fun builds to me, and it was a completely different build than what I personally run on her. And after getting a bunch of requests on stream to show you guys what I run, show you guys the build, what the build was when I was running it, I decided to take my time and put together an actual build video for her, especially because right now we're kind of in a little bit of a holding pattern as I await dropping a bunch of format into some of these frames that are going to get crazy reworks, crazy adjustments that I'm super excited for coming up on the 19th of March. With all of this said, Trinity's a really great frame. I really do like her. She's a lot of fun, and her rework was kind of exactly what she needed to just kind of amplify her a little bit more. As you can already see, we're using a Null Star build. That is because although she does have the redirection from Link and Blessings 75% additional, honestly 75, 75, and then 50 from shields wasn't exactly enough for me to feel super comfortable about calling this an Immortal build until I added in the extra Null Star. Now there's other options you can do to make a bit of a different build for her. Maybe if you want to do something with like Nourish or Eclipse to make more of a weapon platform, you certainly can. It's definitely an option and it will work very well. But the fun thing you get with Null Star, even though I use it all the time and I do love the ability as a Subsume, is you get a lot of damage from the heat procs that it does. And just so you know, the reason that we are on Mott today is because they do not only 200% more damage here because of the Void effect of them being the 4th level Void, but also they are just a really, really good example of these corrupted agents. Honestly, this is the weakest that she will be. Those are getting changed and updated coming up in the new patch on the 19th. A little bit of quality of life to get rid of some of that overguard that is just absurd, so they won't be giving overguard to themselves, and it'll also cause the overguard to decay from the enemies a little bit faster, a little bit better, which does mean that she is in her weakest state in this video, so I figured it was a really good time as well just to show you guys how this works. The other thing though that Null Star is going to give us is just a lot of CC, good amount of damage, and still an additional 75% damage reduction. So we'll have 3 sources of 75 and 1 source of 50% from the flat damage reduction from our shields. Overall, it's a very, very tanky build, and it works really well at keeping Trinity alive as long as she can keep casting, keep going. She's also going to provide a ton of support to the team because she's going to be dropping energy all the time. She's going to be dropping affinity range, not just heals, but also damage reduction all the time. And she's going to be dropping a good amount of armor strip anytime an enemy dies that is a link. It's going to go to that next enemy as long as they're within a pretty decent range. So you do have a lot of freedom here, and it is very good because of it. Now I've yapped enough, yapology degree going hard, but let's get right into the build for you today. Now, I went back and forth with a few different things on Trinity, but overall what I found to be the most important, the most effective for her was Brief Respite for the aura. You could substitute this instead with an Augur Reach instead of Stretch in this build, but I personally don't recommend it. There's not too much value you get out of a lot of the other auras. The closest competition that she's going to have is Growing Power, and while that is good, you are going to benefit a little bit from extra power strength. I do have it set up at the moment to not really need it, and Brief Respite does give a ton of value with the Aegis that we run. Now, if you wanted to run Arcane Ice Storm and go for something as far as weapons that are going to do damage like cold damage, cause freezes, that is an option. You'll get a ton of strength, another 40%, and another 40% duration, both of which are awesome for this build. It's a very good synergy, but you do lose the little bit of a brainless effect that I really like with Aegis and being able to shield gate with all of this damage reduction. It feels so good. So I personally went with Aegis, but obviously if that's not your cup of tea, I totally get it. You're going to be able to get your shields back really easily anyway with Blessing, and honestly you're not taking much damage to them anyway. As you can see, most enemies are pretty much handled almost all the time anyway. Whenever you do lose shields, again, Blessing pulls them right back, not a big deal. So from there, we do also want to run a bunch of duration. The duration is going to be our way of getting as many null stars as possible, but also it's going to be our way of getting the longest Blessing buff possible. Blessing doesn't have a crazy long duration at base, so you really want a lot of duration here because Blessing is an expensive ability to have to keep recasting. Now, you don't care about efficiency too much, but when you are using it over and over and over again, it just kind of interferes with the general way that I like to play her, so I didn't like that. Energy Vampire covers your energy needs here, but having to constantly use it would be a little bit obnoxious potentially, so it's just the way that I handle it. You could potentially go for more range here and drop the narrow-minded, but you are going to be losing a lot of your null stars from null star, obviously, which is going to be a huge damage dump. It's going to weaken your links. You're going to be recasting it more. It's going to weaken your blessings. You're going to be recasting it more. All of that doesn't feel great. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is that she does have really good base ranges. So not only are you getting the 18.8 meter range of her link, which is already pretty strong, you're also going to be getting the 18.8 meter range of null stars whenever you recast it for their seeking, but they are only going to be seeking 9.4 meters naturally. That's actually a really good thing. It means you get to keep them for the most part until you really want to send them out, unless enemies are getting closer than that 9.4 meters. Pretty cool. And then the explosion is going to be 7.5 meters. Again, as long as the enemies are grouped up, it's going to cover that area anyway, so it's not a huge deal. You're also going to be getting a really, really easy radius of 23.5 meters, even with this 94% range build that I'm running. Again, you don't need that. That's for Energy Vampire. You don't need more than that. That's going to be fine. It's going to cover yourself. It's going to probably cover a teammate or two unless they're off in Narnia. And if they are, then who cares? You're not going to hit them anyway. And then finally, Blessing is affinity range, so you don't care about range on that ability at all. So honestly, range is really good at about 100%. Past that, it can be okay, but you don't need that much more. So sacrificing a little bit of range here and then getting it back with the combination of stretch and cunning drift is perfectly fine. Run flow so that you have more energy, a little bit more leeway here. It's going to give you a nice pool that you can fill up with your Energy Vampire. And then you run blind rage for the extra strength. And then finally Arcane Vitalities, doubling up on those heat procs that we're going to be getting from Null Star. It's a very, very good utilization here because you're also preserving Trinity from any toxin damage or toxin procs that she might face versus Infested. It's a really, really good value that you're getting on that completely. The final thing is Abating Link, Neutron Star. Neutron Star, you already knew we were going to be running the Augment here because we do want those heat procs. We do want that damage. And then Abating Link, removing armor from enemies is going to make them even weaker to that blast damage that you're going to be throwing out with Null Star. It also makes it just so much easier to kind of bring whatever weapons you want. The loadout that I have in the gameplay here is the regular Oma with a really weak melee influence build that I decided to run. We're running the Spore Lacer secondary with a just kind of basic build for that. I don't even think I have a Riven for it or anything fancy. And then the Cedo that I just have a basic primer build on for, Cedo Prime specifically. And honestly, it's shredding through enemies really, really easily. The only things that even stand a little bit of a baby chance are those Corrupted Ancients, and once those get nerfed down, it's gonna melt them too. So everything's kind of fine here. Again, I wanted to show you guys her at her weakest, and it really does kind of embody that immortality. Aegis is going to keep her nice and topped off, and then Mult Augmented for extra power strength. This is going to allow us to get to 9 enemies linked with our shards that we're running for the link, and that's not insane, but it's enough that honestly you're pretty comfortable with. Every time one of those enemies goes down, you're going to link to a new one as long as they're within that 18.8 meter range, which feels very comfortable, and I'm pretty okay with that. It's also a 50-second duration with this build. Again, it feels really, really comfy, really, really easy. Finally, Blessing is going to have a 38-second timer for it for that 75% damage reduction. Honestly, you can cast it a little bit more freely if you want to. That's going to be really easy because of the Energy Vampire giving us all of our energy back. Just a really simple build. Now, I mentioned shards, so let's get right into those. I am running 3 red shards for ability strength, 1 for shield capacity. In the gameplay, you actually see 2 blues for shield capacity. Got me to 2.3 second shield gate duration. I liked it, but honestly it wasn't super important. What was nice though is getting my strength to a 240% so that Mult Augmented takes me over 300. As long as you are at 300% strength, you're going to have enough strength to give yourself 9 link, which feels really good. The strength also benefits a little bit into your null star, adding more damage there, and then it is going to benefit into your energy vampire as well. There's a true damage component here. You're going to see me use it a lot on bigger enemies or Eximus, stuff like that, because there is a true damage amount that comes through. Keep in mind that damage attenuation is going to weaken that a little bit, but it is very strong, especially when you combine it with viral. Especially when I was showcasing it on stream, I showcased it against the Thrax, and if you viral out the Thrax and then use the energy vampire, you'll just notice that their health just gets bursted way down. Combine that with all the heat procs that you're sending out. Again, we're sending out about 30 null stars all at the same time, which is going to be very, very strong, stacking up double the heat procs, so instantaneously proccing 60 heat procs onto enemies, being able to do that multiple times. As soon as the overguard goes down on an enemy, they just pop. It's very, very easy, very satisfying too. But keep in mind, all of these shards, very optional. The only one that I would say is kind of mandatory is the cast speed shard. That is because Blessing takes forever to cast, Link, long cast time, and Energy Vampire, also a long committed cast animation. So being able to shorten those feels so good. It's also going to make Null Star, especially with how much you're casting it. You're saving a lot of time when you can remove some of those. Feels really good. Personally, I almost always have a cast speed shard on my frames. I just think it's going to almost always benefit you because the more you're casting, the more benefit you will see from extra cast speed. And in this build, we are casting quite a bit, at least with Null Star, and then we do have a little bit of freedom with the other abilities. Energy Vampire, you can kind of cast whenever you want. Blessing, cast when it's up. Very, very simple build. The general play style is when you start off the mission, as soon as you can, either cast your Link to give you that status and CC immunity, as well as some damage reduction, and then use Energy Vampire to get everything else going, or cast your Energy Vampire first if you want to make sure you have your energy, then go Link, Null Star, Blessing, and then you're pretty much good to go from there for the rest of the mission. It's very, very simple, and again, it works with just about any weapon. Normally, this is when I would give you guys some weapon recommendations, but honestly, I don't have much for you here. Run it with anything. The more meta the weapon, the better it's going to do. If you're running the Null Star build, as long as the enemies are grouped up, you're just going to shred them with Null Star anyway, so it doesn't really matter what you run here, if we're being really honest. The best thing maybe if you wanted to go for real synergy is anything that's going to pop off their overguard, so anything secondary fortifier is going to be great. And the reason for that is because ripping off their overguard means that they're going to be a little bit weaker to those abilities that you're sending out, and the heat procs will just rip through them very easily. So that's always going to be an option. Something like the Epitaph secondary fortifier would be fantastic. Outside of that, anything really does work. I'm not kidding. Run it with anything melee influence for the AoE on your melee, but if you want to go with a hard, heavy hitting crit melee, you can do that too. But really, this is just a simple build. The biggest recommendation though would be on the pets. Now, for the pets, I personally recommend anything robotic. That's going to mean either the Hounds or a Sentinel. Sentinels just come back really easily, and I really like that. Essentially, you kill one Eximus and you're going to get it back. It's just very convenient. Even though you're giving it a bunch of damage reduction and you're CCing really hard, all it takes is one stray shot, and then all of a sudden you have no pet. So just being able to bring it back really easily. The Taxon also benefits because you're spending a ton of energy, which I personally equip my R-Tax onto the Taxon. Not only are you getting tons of extra shield gating from the Taxon, but you're then getting a bunch of freezes and CC from it. You could go for a more murderous kind of thing with like fire up and stuff like that equipped, or a Nautilus to group enemies together, but really that's up to you. The Hound is also going to be a really good option, bring a little bit more damage, a lot of priming, things like that to the table. It's going to feel really good. It's going to be very nice too. You're going to give it some damage reduction, but it is going to take a little bit longer to bring it back to life should it go down. Now, if you're going a really melee heavy playstyle, that's not a big deal, because Prime Pack Leader kind of just comes in and serves as your survivability on top of obviously Blessing being a little bit there for you too. If it does go down, it's going to be kind of rare at that point, but it really is up to you how you want to play, what you want to go for. Honestly, Trinity's really simple. She's a very, very simple frame, and that's kind of why I didn't know that I was going to make a video for her until it was requested a bunch on stream. I was running it and people just kept asking what the build was, so I figured I would throw it together. I know a lot of people have been using more gimmicky, more niche type playstyles for her, especially using her Well of Life and how that kind of works now, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do with her. You could definitely do some weird things with Well of Life, just not really my cup of tea. What I really did enjoy, however, was the combination of Link being able to strip and Null Star being able to send out 30 of those particles. It's an innate damage buff because you're sending out so many heat procs and all that kind of stuff. It's just really fun, plays really, really well, and it's really smooth, works with just about any weapon, just very versatile. I really liked it, and I hope you guys do too. If you did, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. It helps me out a ton more than you know. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, please know that I love your faces. Bye, y'all.